Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining us. My name is Dan Whitmarsh. I am here to talk with you today about going for gold, harnessing the power of pay, benefits, rewards, and recognition, otherwise known as total rewards. So let me just do a little bit of housekeeping here first. I want to make sure we have participants in and screen is shared. I can see my video and I can hear my voice on the sound checks. Everything was good. What we'd like to do, I am running this event today solo, I don't have the privilege of a sidekick with me. So if there are questions and comments, if you could type them into the chat or the QA, and I'll take a few minutes, maybe every, at the end of kind of major sections throughout the presentation today, and I'll look through to see if there's any open chats or questions. And then I'm going to try and leave some time at the end to address some of those. But we could always take some of these offline if we need to. So welcome again. And here we are, we're gonna talk about this. Our time together is gonna be pretty quick today. I've got a few introduction about HR strategies consulting, and then we're gonna talk about total rewards programming. And then we're gonna do a showcase of some total rewards solutions, and then wrap up with some questions, answers, next steps, okay? So my name is Dan Whitmarsh. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at HR Strategies Consulting, otherwise known as HRSC. I've been with the company for almost a year, but I've been in the talent management and technology space since 1989. So that's quite a bit of time. I've seen a lot of things evolve and change over that time. And certainly had a great deal of experiences, not just working with technology, but also working with world-class companies and trying to understand the intersection of where software, HR best practices and technology really all come together to drive business changes. So with that being said, I'm here and available to you. My contact information you can always use. I'll share it again at the end. What we're going to do first is talk about HR strategies. So for those who don't know, we've been in the business for over 20 years. It's been two major divisions to our organization or our structure have come together to make us. The first on the left, you'll see a human capital management practice. So we do have a team of consultants who dedicate time to helping HR practitioners with a lot of great system strategies and services, I guess is the better word. And then on the right side, we have an HR information technology practice. So we're also resellers and partners of some of the leading edge solutions that help companies deliver said solutions. So it's not just about understanding a practice or understanding the technology behind the practice. It's really a marriage of the two that helps drive human capital results. And we're going to see that come to light today when we talk about total rewards. So what we have next on the slide deck is an ongoing cycle. I don't know if any of you have been part of the series of broadcasts we've been doing across the year, but we've really been taking this circular wheel here, which really outlines the employee life cycle. And then way back in January and February, we covered the hiring modules. We did onboarding, I think, in March. We moved through learning in April, performance in May. We took some time in June to do DEI strategies, and then we also leveraged in succession planning into there in July. Now we're into August, and we're looking at the pay and the benefits side of this, the rewarding side. So we've really ostensibly covered joining, growing, and now we're at the final phase that is going to close the circle for rewarding. Not to be confused with there's nothing left to talk about next. We've got a good series of events I'll tip my hat to at the end of the event with what's coming next, but this is covering the outside circle around this wheel. So let's jump into this, and I wanted to give you a little deeper dive into what we call total rewards. We use these words interchangeably, and I'm a victim of it too. I still think of wages, compensation, pay, recognition, all of these things interchangeably, and they actually are very different and distinct events or parts of the program, but we're going to talk about all of them. So what we're going to do today is understand the key elements of total rewards. Really, how did we get to this point of total rewards from compensation? Then I'm going to introduce what I call the gold standard framework. And we're going to segue from that gold standard framework to a whole self philosophy of work, which sounds like a very vague abstract, but believe me, when we look at this in light of the standard frameworks that we're going to put in front of it, hoping it makes great sense to you at that point. And then we're going to talk about the importance of connecting performance to compensation. Second bullet is really to understand the impact of compensation or total rewards on all of the other talent management practices. And then third, tools that we're going to dive into a system. I'm going to show you some software that's going to help you manage total rewards. And then we'll follow up with a way to make it, quote, easy in capital letters. So, and then at the end, question answers, what comes next after total rewards. So without any further ado, I see there's already one Q&A in the chat. Let's take a quick look with it. Okay, we're all good. It's a simple question about, will this be recorded? And yes, that is the case. This will be recorded and given to you. So this needs to be said or noted. Compensation, I just did this, I did it in Merriam-Webster, all different dictionaries, it really comes up with the same connotations. But the underlying theme here is that this is about toil, stress, or something you've put somebody through and how you make it up to them. So it's a recompense for loss, injury, or suffering. So using the word compensation really has an unfortunately negative connotation to it, and it's not going to, go away. That's still what compensation means. Every time I hear compensation, I think of those, late night lawyer TV commercials that you might have seen or see on billboards everywhere. I can get you compensation. And we still use that term today when we talk about giving people money for the work that they do for us. And that's really a bad label to use. So having admitted that I've been in this space for a long time, I still use it, unfortunately. And I try as hard as I can to shift to the total rewards portion of this. And so please forgive me if I do default backwards from time to time. So what I wanted to do next is take you on a little bit of a journey, because this is fun, but it's also really interesting, and it sets the stage to show you how compensation has changed over time. And that's where I'm trying to lead us, is to show you how it's still changing and going in a different direction that you may already be aware of or you may not thought of yet. So this was a great article, a scholarly article on ResearchGate, published by some academics, and it really outlines some very salient points. It's a short, great read, about 5 pages online, I think. But really, when you think about, 2 million years ago, work was really survive. Just survive, and if you're lucky, get enough food to feed your clan. So that was what work used to be. And then, 7,000 years ago, approximately, we started to come together into communities and hubs, and people got specialized skills. And, you were a great farmer, I was the great metal worker. We bartered and we changed stuff. So it became wages or economy of sharing things that became the elements of the society. So what we're really looking to do here, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let's put that back up. The advent of the communities, they brought specialized skills together, and really goods for service came about. And then about 3,000 years ago, I've got a quick snippet there of the Code of Hammurabi. Whoever thought that the Code of Hammurabi would come up in an HR webcast? It actually starts to document and talk about what's reasonable wages for people's time and efforts. And the Quran did the same not far after that, or around the same time. The Old Testament actually started to chronicle what wages meant and how you did this. And even Buddha got in on the act and chronicling what was fair for the services provided. So, at this point, we're looking at still that compensation model. You do something that costs you effort, time, and I'll give you something in exchange for it. But if we start to move forward a little bit further, to 150 years ago, maybe around the advent of the Industrial Revolution, we really start to take a shift, and we'll see that more rules, processes, and philosophies become adopted into the way we do work and the way we pay people for their work. And what happens is, suddenly we're starting to see different things evolve. Oh, I just got a note that the presentation isn't up. Let me double check that. Thank you for that heads up. So you missed all my little graphics. Let's just do a quick recap. The 2 million years ago, getting and gathering food. We've got, the barter of the economies and civilizations, the Code of Hammurabi. And, more recently, we've moved here. You can see an icon or a picture that kind of connotes the Industrial Revolution. And then 30 years ago, we started to get into more recent times where we started to introduce incentives into work. So it became commonplace that if this happened, then at the end of the year, you would get these things. And that was the colloquial bonus term that we all know about. But as we look to more towards today, we're hearing talk of total rewards. In this diagram, it's talking about benefits, learning, development, work life, performance recognition, and pay constituting what we know as total rewards. But the story and the history here is really important for a reason. What we're trying to do is paint a picture. Way back, it was about time, somebody taking your time from you. And distant history was more about wages added to taking time from you. Then when we got into more near recent history, incentives were woven into the equation with the wages and the time. And then moving forward, we're looking at a different model. We've still got time, but now it's giving time and taking time. Employers can use time as an incentive to equip you with the reward or recognition. Take time off, have some extra time. These are perks now that we can consider as part of a total rewards packages. We still got wages, we still got incentives, but the two other elements here are development. So we're now actually looking at, hey, you did a great job on this, and I think you would really be good at something else that could have a bigger impact on the organization. So we're going to invest in your development, or we're going to invest in your well-being, your health, because we know that healthy people produce better results. So companies are actually taking a strategic shift in the way they think about total rewards. It's really no longer compensation. It is about moving forward and giving total rewards across these domains of incentive, wages, time, development, and well-being. So if you think about the olden days, toiling was a great expense to us. And then more recently, we started to toil for greater expense instead of being an expense on us. And then as we look at what we're doing today, we're toiling for a common good. We're trying to develop ourselves to be the best me that I can be, and at the same time contribute in a most meaningful way to the organization in which I'm employed. So it's a very different shift in philosophy. We're looking at what they got from us now versus what they can give us. So we've actually done the shift of, what they took from us to what they want to give us now. And it's not so much about, taxing my body or my brain to do things. It's about enabling me to contribute in a meaningful way. We're going to talk more about that in a few seconds, but let's go back and just look at the not that long ago. And when I say not that long ago, it might be for some people who are my age, and for many, and I'm sure the majority of the workforce, it is still like this. Payday happens on a scheduled event, whether it's weekly, monthly, annually, 2 weeks, whatever cycle you're on. And it kind of comes as advertised in the job offer you took. There's really no talking to your boss about it, no talking to HR about it. And if you were bold enough and there was an open opportunity, you might discuss, hey, what can I do to get a raise here? And that's the way that, unfortunately, the majority of the workforce works these days. So what we're doing, is looking at 80 hours equals a paycheck. So time is money in that sense. But if we think about total compensation today, it's really taking a holistic look at how the person complies, fits in, works within your organization. An individual might say, did I meet my goals? Do I contribute more than others? There's a team of 5 of us. I pull more than my fair share, but Jim doesn't do his and Sally doesn't do hers. Let's, how do we equate this and make equity happen? So equity, by the way, I'm going to talk about it quickly right now because it came up, but it is not, that could be a whole separate 1-hour event that we could talk about. Equity really means, in this case, just making sure it's transparent and connected to what everybody believes. And I understand there's a lot more to it than that. Managing it is a full practice. We have a team dedicated to it, but it's not going to come up too much more in this conversation today. Further, what performance indicators will you use to calculate variable pay, right? Is there a transparent process, a little bit more of the equity, I guess, to help see how much the company makes from my efforts? You know, if every time I turn something and make something happen and it costs me a great effort and I get an extra dollar and the company gets an extra $100, well, is that really fair? And is it transparent? Is it equating, and is there a good, generous distribution of wealth? One of the measures that's often brought in, just a discussion point here, is the gap or productivity per employee and how that scales up to the C-level compensation range, which is certainly a big bone of contention for a lot of companies who are trying to manage and bring that down into a more reasonable vision of line of sight. What would you put on the table to keep me engaged long term? So, you know, short-term incentives work, but there's also, hey, it takes a lot of time, money, and energy to bring somebody up in an organization and get them to be very productive and proficient and help, you know, keep our engines moving. We don't want them to leave. So we got to do things that force them or coerce them, or I shouldn't say force or coerce, incent them to stay long term and be part of the organization, not just get through the next cycle of paychecks or bonuses. And do we make rewards visible to all employees and as an example of others? So it's really about recognition and promoting culture, which we're also going to talk more about. So let's jump to the Q&A. I see two are up there. And I see, oh, yeah, can't see your presentation. Thank you. And I think that's been rectified. We should be good. And the other question about recording is all covered. So we're good. Okay. According to the experts, so World at Work, if you're not familiar with them, a wonderful organization, does great publications, research, events, conferences, webcasts. I can't say enough about them. I've known about them for quite a long time, and think a lot of them. They are, you know, considered the expert organization dedicated to total rewards programming. And this is their model. And as you look at the 5 key elements of it's compensation, the financial incentive, well-being, benefits, development, and recognition. What I want to draw your attention to is what comes out of that: workforce experiences and organization performance. Okay, a lot to be said about here, and we're going to talk more about those two in a few minutes. But those are things I'd like to park to the side, and I'll bring our attention back to it in a second. But what we use, or the conventional models I was raised on, and it still applies, is what I call the gold standard of total rewards. So gold, what's the G part? Is the guaranteed income. You know, O, what are the observable activities warranting reward or recognition? L, what kind of luxury services are provided by your company? And I'm going to break each of these open in a few minutes and talk about examples of them. And then D, what's the discretionary comp based on performance? You know, a lot of people often comment, hey, wait a minute, O and D sound pretty similar. Not quite. And we'll break this out further as we go through this. So let's look at the G of the gold standard. So gold standard, guaranteed income, G, base salary, bi-weekly, regular, monthly, however you get your paycheck. It can also include pensions, because a lot of people are still fortunate enough to be in a role where pensions might be part of their program, and it contributes to their lifelong efforts to earn an income. Okay. Now we switch to the L. Before we move on, general theme here with guaranteed income is that this is the entry point to the position and what the basic entitlement will be. This is the price for, say, quote, 40 hours per week of your time. Effort spent during your time is reflected in discretionary pay, which we're going to segue to in a second. So as we go through the O, we've got observable activities warranting reward and recognition. We've got variable pay, which are often sales commissions or spot awards. You know, client says, hey, geez, Stephanie did an awesome job on that presentation last month. We should really give her something extra. So it doesn't have to be money, but it could be gift cards or even just a badge of acknowledgement. I mean, there's all kinds of variations. We'll look at some examples shortly. So they can come from clients, or they could just be denoted as excellence in a project. And these are huge events that really contribute in meaningful ways to performance and cultural nuances of an organization. We've got bonus pay. So some companies just make a generous donation to all employees at a Christmas time, or when Big Eid happens. Here's some extra money for your family, or prosperity, or Chinese New Year, or all kinds of different cultural festivities, or wherever that organization is operating. You can tie these to these significant events that are typically recognized for being generous. There are recognitions. Hey, you were the top of the team, the employee of the month, the wall of fame, or whatever it is at your organization that gets notoriety. These are great ways that you can do observable actions. There are rewards. Hey, you knocked that out of the park. Here's a gift card. Hey, you put in a lot of extra hours this week. Here's some movie passes. Here's tickets to the water park. Here's some tickets to a local sporting event, or even here's a fund of money for you guys to buy lunches for the whole team for the next month. So there's lots of ways rewards can happen. There are just nominations. Often the whole process of just setting up nominations and manage them is more exciting than actually winning them. Just to see who gets nominated and for what can be a real eye-opener for a lot of HR practitioners and managers alike, okay? We've got gifts, chocolate of the month club, beer of the month club, Thanksgiving turkeys, there's no shortage of things to consider here. We've got autonomy. Hey, you've really taken your stride here. Things are going great. I'm, as your manager, just going to step away and give you more autonomy to do things the way you need to do. So it doesn't have to be, these are just observable examples of where we can celebrate. Hey, education, we've noted that you've become an expert in project management. We'd love to invest in your project management skills because it's going to help us and it's going to help you. Can we pay for some schooling? Can we do something to advance your skills and interests that we both benefit from? Charitable donations. Do you have something of choice that you'd like us to make a donation to? So in general, these are observable activities warranting reward or recognition. And the general theme here is that the employees are being rewarded for attitudes and actions that improve company performance, morals, or even reinforce cultural objectives, okay? So the next one are L, luxury services provided by your company. So this is a little more complex. It's not always about, rewarding you. Sometimes there's some, hey, let's promote the brand of the company to our employees. So clothings, mugs, branded golf balls, koozies, knickknacks, mementos, can be concierge services, could be paid parking, meal allowances, car allowances, spa in the office. That was a great one at a place I used to work at, where every 2 weeks they would bring in a masseuse or masseur with a table, and they'd set it up in one of the open boardrooms, and we could all book 15-minute slots throughout the day to go in and have your neck worked on, your shoulders worked on. And it was just a great way to take a 15-minute break, but get a massage at the same time. And the more 15-minute slots you got was actually a function of your performance. I've also working with a client right now who is a major meat packer, and they do a program called Bring Home the Bacon, and we manage the technology for them. But depending upon your performance throughout that segment of work, you get so many pounds of bacon, and you cash in the voucher and you pick it up on your way out of work based off of performance. So they're actually, putting their own products on the line and rewarding their employees with recognition for work well done. There can be stock options, vested or not vested benefits, even 401k in the US or RSP matching here in Canada. So lots of options, but the general theme here is that these services are designed traditionally to help you achieve more in your day. So they're not like giving you something for nothing. They're giving you things that help you manage your day easier so that you can do more of what you do really well that generates income and revenue for the organization. They can also serve as cultural pieces, help bringing and gel communities together, and just promote brand loyalty by putting a brand in place of, every time I look at that mug with our company name on it, I can't think how great this team is to work with, right? So the last one of this is discretionary pay. This is merit pay or distribution of based on performance management or performance bonuses. It can be promotions where we maybe, one, increase within our pay band based on achievements and accomplishments, or performance or promotion to a whole other different job and pay band. In all cases, additional time off and vacation are great, or spiffs, which I found out ironically, I always thought spiffs meant that you just got extra perks. Spiff was originally spouse in for free, meaning if we're taking a business trip, your significant other gets to come with you. Sales contests are great examples of this. So these are things that are kind of discretionary pay based on rules and things that are set up. And we're going to look today in the software to see how we actually manage some of these pieces ourselves. Now, I'm going to pause again for any comments, questions. All good on that front. And let's jump into the next section. I promised you we'd come back to this. Oh, sorry. General theme here is that we're providing additional incentives to excel at targeted performance outcomes. So remember when we looked at that world of work model not long ago? And I said, we're going to talk about the whole self model, which sounds like a really vague concept and abstract thought. It's not. It's actually a very realistic and very tangible thing that many organizations are having great success with. The whole self model is predicated on not just showing up to do 80 hours of work. It's about bringing yourself to work in all that you are, using all of the energy, powers, beliefs, and capabilities you have to not only get work done, but to influence positively those around you. And it reminds me of the great consultant, David White. I was privileged to see him a couple times present and speak and follow him on social media. But he used to tell the story about working with the big four consultancies where they would go out and they would spend incredible amounts of money and they would look for people with depth and breadth of skill across all interests of areas, not just work, their social interests, their hobbies, their actions, their philanthropy, and they would spend considerable amount of money to bring them on board, and then they drive them into this little narrow wedge and make them do the same thing over and over again every day, disregarding everything that they were. We don't want to do that. We want people to come to work and be their whole self, because having an artifact you at work is not the best way to get resources or things done in a meaningful way. Work has to be meaningful to individuals. If you remember that shift we talked about earlier now, it's not about you compensating me. It's about us working together so I can bring my best self forward and you can reward and recognize me for the best things that come out of me being my whole self. So this is a big movement that's kind of stemming from the human experience management platform. So this is a big push with SAP and SuccessFactors and HRSC as well. We're really thinking about, especially during these COVID times, what the experience of employees is like at work. Do we give them the right tools, equipment, and interfaces to work with? And we've got good data that says we actually don't do that very well, and we need to get better at it. But if we look at the human experience, HXM management, and the whole self model, we're looking at something that produces and drives engagement, right? And that's still, you know, in many cases, the holy grail of HR. We're trying to do things that drive engagement because engagement makes people produce more and it makes them happier with what they do, which are really key. And that produces moments that matter. So moments that matter are really an HR perspective of how the HR programs and the life cycle of an employee come together. But from an individual element, we're over here on the right. Moments that matter to me. This is an employee-centered point of view. So enabling people to power their business and bringing life to passions, aspirations, and unique talents. So when you think about that whole self model, it plays perfectly into total rewards, okay? And you know, the data to prove this is really quite equipped. 84% of leaders point to experience as a top priority, but only 9% believe that they're ready to address the issue. They don't have infrastructure, technology, or pieces in place to make this happen. And that's a study that was recently published by Deloitte, okay? So what's important here is to leverage technology. HR software can be an invaluable tool. It can be leveraged not just to track and deliver pieces, it's actually a meaningful way for people to interact with their work. And we're learning that at a rapid pace right now. They need to have world-class human experience management to give them visibility into what they need to do and where they stand to earn rewards and recognition. Because remember, rewards are nice, recognition is equally as nice. Managers need a world-class platform to align this performance, track it, and incent their teams. And HR needs to collect data on all of this so that we can look for ways that we can maximize and opportunize the process to make it better. Your tech needs to be fully integrated with learning performance, succession, recruiting, and internal mobility. And of course, this allows us to collect data, because if you're not measuring it, there's really no guaranteed ways to improve this, okay? So let's look at the impact or the ripple effect of how this actually plays out across other talent management modules. So ripple effect of total rewards. For those who've been following this series of events, I love this piece of research, 2006 Corporate Executive Board on the EVP. EVP is your employee value proposition. So if you have a strong articulated employee value proposition, so tough to say, and you promote that out in your recruitment efforts, they're telling us that you can actually reduce the compensation to land qualified people by 11%, because the EVP speaks to people, makes them engaged and want to join the organization and contribute at a high level. If you don't have a clear EVP, be prepared to pay. That's the bottom line, right? The other portion of this is that top 10 reasons for voluntary turnover polls. There's dozens of them out there. I looked for a handful of them last week in prep for this event, and I've pulled a slide up that kind of encapsulates a good mix of them. The rankings vary from place to place depending on their modus operandi and what software services they promote. But if you think about total rewards, it is still the leading index of recruitment advertising. So why, so you need a Java developer in San Diego. Why do I want to do this for your company versus the other 5 companies I see who also need a Java developer in San Diego? So it's really understanding what you're going to offer these people, which is again, really an EVP and total rewards. They go hand in hand. Fourth, career advancement or development, internal mobility is key. If you want to develop a culture of great total rewards, internal mobility has to be a pinnacle part of that process, okay? Now, the 5th element to layer in here is really we're on the eve of what many people call the great resignation they're speculating about. I'm of mixed opinion. I think it's a very realistic potential that people could do a massive job shift soon as we get past this pandemic. But at the same time, they might not. So I don't know. It's certainly been speculated by brains greater than mine, and I don't really want to put a stake in the sand, and it's not important to do so. But it's understanding that if you do have a great total rewards program, it's going to pay great dividends should we get into this great resignation phase that could come. As we think about this from an onboarding perspective, aligning values, vision, and purpose by total rewards makes it easier for those to come on board, get up to speed faster, and understand, oh, you need me to do more of this on a regular basis, not this. Things that are contributing to reward and recognition really speed up and facilitate a great onboarding process. Let's jump into those top 10 reasons for turnover polls. There's one here that I pulled from Best Money Moves. It was a nice mix of everything that I'd seen online, but it gave actual percentages of how many people responded with these. So it was nice to see some data behind it. But if you look at these items, pay, right? Manageable workload, growth or advancement opportunities. So remember when we talked about compensation historically, where it was just the money that you got at the end of the week, but then we shifted into what's the whole me work version of work and total rewards as we sit now, where the employees are actually looking beyond compensation into rewards, well-being, and recognition. Well, if we look at these 10 items, it's not just one, it's 8 of the 10 items fall into total rewards. Work life is total rewards. Unsatisfactory benefits, total rewards. Employee recognition, total rewards. Employee health and safety, total rewards. Remote work, total rewards. Unsatisfactory salary, definitely compensation, total rewards. Unmanageable stress, workload, growth, and advancement. These are all now 8 of the top 10 are considered part of the total rewards package. So you can see how the scope has crept from just what did you get paid to what's it like there, or how do you get rewarded for the work that you do. So coming back to the other performance management modules, we've got learning and development. learning and development itself can be a reward. It can be a currency that you use to help drive future skills and competencies. And it's a true win-win for the employee and the organization, because you're both going to benefit from this. Performance management, variable pay programs can serve as a linchpin that really hooks performance to hard-scale compensation rules for commission plans. We'll look at that in a second. Achievements on goals and objectives and overall pay help drive rules to allocate discretionary pay. So a manager may get an extra 2% increase to share with the team. He has to decide how to distribute that. Well, we're going to use goals and objectives to do so. Succession planning and career development, really we're identifying moving individuals up shows recognition, so it's visible to all of those involved in the organization, and it allows for them to get further into a new pay scale or up the pay scale that they're currently on. And then even identifying key roles in the organization and promoting open doors, it adds elements so that people may just want to get to that next role or next title as a sign of recognition. Or maybe they get to another level in an organization and suddenly new perks like a car allowance or a phone allowance comes with it that they didn't get at a lower level in the organization. And from the Holy Grail perspective, engagement and retention is always on the table. We looked at that top 10 reasons, right? There was 8 of the 10 were there, but the top 10 reasons for engagement, Aberdeen tells us that they're not feeling challenged at work. But if you're bringing your whole self to work, we'll know very quick if you're being challenged or not, because we're allowing for that conversation and the whole self to show up and be a part of the workforce, not just check this box 80 times a week and do this 32 times and then go home and get a paycheck at the end of the week. 34% reported that they're sticking with their current employer because they foresee an opportunity as part of their future growth, their company. So, it's about, hey, do I belong here? Do I fit here? Can I grow here? So these are all, again, really key elements that can drive engagement and retention as we get through the process. When you create a succession plan, it showcases growth. Everybody sees it, opportunities and challenges employees to do more. They get a more positive outlook on their future at your company, and as a result, they're more likely to stick around long term. That's pretty common sense. And work is definitely more aligned to individual skills and competencies, and the results will be evident for both the individual who feels more satisfied and for the business who achieves a better outcome. So let's do this. Let's jump into a demo account. So I'm going to quickly change screens here and log into one of my software instances. I'm going to log into an instance of SAP SuccessFactors as a manager named Jeff Hill. And what I wanted to do here is pretty simple. Share screen. Number 2. Okay. I'm hoping that this is still visible. I see another Q&A in there. I'll get to that shortly, Catherine. Team calibration. So we've got a full suite here of SuccessFactors talent management modules enabled. And where I want to go through is this plan compensation. So Jeff is a manager. He's got, I think, 7 or 8 direct reports under him, and then many of them have another 5 or 6 under them. So he's a manager of managers, so to speak. So every year he has to do a compensation planning review. So he can come in and he'll see a screen that looks like this. And here's his direct reports down the left-hand side. And he can look through their individual profiles, see more information about them, add comments. I can look at their profile. I can connect to the achievements they've done. So in this case, we've actually pulled in their overall performance rating on a 5-point scale, probably the most common use, and marked it as, okay, so where are these people on that overall performance review cycle that's happened? What's their current pay? And you can see Jeff manages a global team because he might have people who are part of different parts of the organization in different countries and on different compensation scales. So we can actually show this in functional currency, local currency, or however we want to do this. And you'll see this looks a little bit like an Excel document, and that's intentionally because that's actually the biggest competitor we have to this platform is Excel. This is where most people still manage their compensation. You can see that these grids all pop open to give us greater or less information depending on where we want to go. We can import market pay information. We can do country specific allocations and adjustments. But if I go to the merit section here and I maybe look at Jada Baker, because she was an extraordinary, we have a rule written that she's entitled to 6 or 8% of discretionary pay. So this is above and beyond variable compensation. So I can click on my manager budgets here and see in real time, I've got $16,145.20 to allocate as maybe a 2% increase across my span of control in the business. And if I take Jada's information, maybe bump it to 8%, you can see instantly it gives me a warning, hey, whoa, that you've just exceeded the range. So we can set this rules up in place that either gives us a soft stop and say, hey, that's a little high. Are you sure you want to do that? Or maybe make it 4% and say, hey, you just need to do an explanation. So a soft stop is you just need to give us an explanation and it's going to allow it. Or a more severe next step, if you go to 3 points beyond the scale, might say, hey, you need to add an extra approver on this. Or if you add 4%, it might just give you a flat out hard stop. And these are all configurable rules we can set up in the system to help manage this. But the key point here is that as I'm managing these raises and changes, it's pulling from my pool in real time, and I can model out what I want to do with my people here. Not only do I manage salary, but you can see here I've got tabs for equity. Oops, so I don't want to save those changes I was modeling. Let's just move on. But if I go to the equity tab, come on. We can not only manage salary, we can do similar things and manage restricted stock options or shares, benefits, 401k pieces. We can go to the third tab and we can manage items for variable pay. So we can look at compensation that might come in based off of performance metrics. And specifically, so if I took a look at somebody like Anson here, one of my profiles, and open his profile, I can actually see a statement here that generates a nice view of what I've got to worry about with Anson. So his final salary grade, where he was, what had changed, his compa ratios are in here. If there was a promotion, it would chronicle that and capture that promotion as well. I can see this from a salary perspective first, where his performance ratings were. That links through to the actual performance data. I can actually look at it from an equity perspective. And if I go to the variable tab over here, I can actually see this connected to payout and benefits based off of organizational performance goals and individual performance goals. And of course, as all good software does, this does all the measurements, recording and reporting, and sends all gross and net into an employee central system that tees up the most ultimate piece of software, which is Payroll Control Center, that sets the rules of what gets put onto my pay stub. Okay. So managing compensation in the system is really quite simple. If I were Jeff, I'm not going to save those changes. I could just go back to the compensation review and I might say, okay, so show me everybody underneath me here. Because my managers have done the same. And what I've got that set to is a filter of only those who broke the rules. If I remove that filter, I'll see all of the reports, not only my 8, but all under my 8 as well, through the entire span of my control. And I have the ability to actually filter through and say, hey, did anybody fall outside the company guidelines? Apply that filter. And I've got Tori, Janice, and Jada that I need to address and take action on. Of course, these all fit into what's called a workflow. So there are options here to actually manage the entire workflow and understand where this sits in and actually get metrics about my whole budget pool, salary, compensation, and configurable dashboards that allow me not only to look at things, but to drill in and click into that piece and start to say, hold on, who are these people who are paid bi-weekly? That's 25%. Oh, here they are. And I can drill into their profiles from there. So they're not just visual renderings, they're actually interactive graphs that help us manage all of this information. So where I'm going to go next with this is to look at what might happen. Actually, we're right here. Let's do rewards and recognition, because this is the other part of it. It doesn't have to be about money. We can have different types of reward programs that your HR administrators can set up, and I can see award histories here by my team, or even just things that are pertaining to myself. Maya Cooper, my boss, on October 10th, 2016, gave me a $1,000 spot grant for doing a great job on a particular project, and I can link through to see that detail. Okay. Now, what I can do as a manager, I may get, it says here that my administrator set up 40,000 US dollars for me of, quote, discretionary fund money to use for rewards and competitions, or I can do peer rewards or just nominations that might constitute gift cards or product or merchandise that your company might actually sell, like the bacon example I gave you earlier. So I could come in and look for maybe Anson and pick him off my list as one of my employees and say, hey, I wanted to do a peer appreciation award. And as I click through these are really simple things to set up. I go to the next screen and it says, well, who do you want to nominate? Well, what are we nominating him for? He had a great, bright idea. Okay, and what level are we doing here? Is he a team player, above and beyond, or a superhero? Well, Anson's always been one of my superheroes, so I'm going to go to that level. And it says, hey, great, because you picked those configurations, he's getting $100. And if I hit step 5, a broadcast goes out, it triggers the right measures and metrics, it gets put onto his paycheck, it shows up on his total reward statement. I can allow it to be notified to my team, my boss, and all the managers, and Anson gets recognition for this. It can be a public event, or it can be a discrete event that we share between us and my manager. So there's lots of ways that we can actually do rewards and recognition in the system. And we saw it when you're here on this tab, how it shows up. But there are also other features. I'm going to go to my files as Jeff Hill, the manager. And what I wanted to do is maybe look at, my compensation here, and I can see historically my compensation information. I can track this. And then in here, I have compensation statements. This one's a little dated, but this is just my discretionary comp statement, my comp rating, my current salary, merit, extra incentives that I've total raise, percentage, and then my final lump sum that was rewarded out. So these are generic letters that can be generated to provide compensation. Or we could do something more graphical like this, which is a total rewards combination statement. So it's not just about, your reward or your promotion or a spot allowance. It's actually salary, merit increase, short-term incentive, and you can list out all the perks, benefits, and pieces that came with that might not have been monetary, and make these part of that statement so that we can track a total rewards combined statement for individuals. So that is a quick kind of short view of what the interface looks like that allows us to help start managing the process. Of course, doing a full comp or total rewards demo usually is an hour or 2 event. We're just doing a high level here on that, and we want to get back to the content of this presentation. So let's talk about this. What we need to do is make it easy, okay? So using software is an essential part because it gives visibility across the line of sight. It contributes to that HXM experience of giving all the users the right access points to see where they are, what they're doing, or to track those who work with them or for them, and also for HR to collect data points on this. But you have to think about this. This is a startling fact. I was in a workshop not long ago, and they were sharing data with us that when you talk about employee salaries, total rewards typically, is anywhere from 75 to 90% of every company's actual operating expense. I mean, if you're Fort Knox and you trade in gold, I guess your product is probably worth more than your people. But in most cases, the people portion or people line of business is the single biggest expense in almost every organization. So that needs to be forecasted, modeled, monitored, and measured in every way, because everything you do at the end of the week is about rewarding people for the work they've done. And that's the biggest expense your company is going to accrue over a year. So to make this easy, we're going to do employee-centric, aligned to your organization's goals, sustainable, and then about your culture. This is the EASY acronym, okay? So let's jump into this. Employee-centric is your total rewards plan. This is almost a checklist. You don't have to do all of these, but you need to think about these elements. Is it transparent? And again, I know I said I wouldn't talk more about equity, but is it clearly connecting individual success to organizational success? Is it competitive? So is our total rewards as good as somebody else's? All right. You got to look in the industry and find out where you sit in terms of market wages. Is it attainable? So if we put a total rewards plan out there and it looks great and everybody oohs and ahs at it, but nobody gets anything, That's not a good scenario. It needs to be attainable. I don't know, I'm assuming most of us are familiar with the SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals. It needs to be the attainable portion of this. And, you know, using a SMART goal to design a plan is a good objective or a good idea. Now, this is the fun one. It can be unique. You know, I think about that bringing home the bacon example. So think about what your company does, has to offer, or contributes, and use whatever you can to be unique about what your individual needs and what the organization needs. And you can have great fun in collaborating around what it is that we're going to use as part of our total rewards. And it doesn't have to be one thing, it can be many things, because everybody wants their own version of it, right? It also needs to be evolving. So, you know, the purpose of putting this in place is so that it's flexible and allows for new situations that will crop up, not might, will crop up. And how are we going to adapt and put something around it that says, well, here's a new obstacle in our way. Let's reward people for figuring out a way to navigate around this. So be prepared to make them evolving goals. They need to be inclusive, right? You know, you don't want to give, you know, the same thing to everybody because of cultural nuances and different levels of or you know, statuses within the DEI spectrum. You want to make sure that whatever you're giving is suitable to the people who want it. So don't think that one size fits all. It's not always a great model. Now, on the A side of easy, it needs to be aligned to your organizational goals. So of course, if getting behavior and changing and rewarding things isn't contributing to a goal, you've got a business result, there's a problem. It needs to be connected to improving business results. It needs to also understand or draw a clear path of how individual productivity per employee is there. And I think we spoke about that earlier. We wanted to draw that kind of scale that says, hey, the CEO makes this, but individual contributors make this, but there needs to be clear line of sight of what an individual does and how their total rewards impacts or their behaviors impact their total reward package. You need to do this because it's also going to close gaps in your local knowledge economy. So whatever skills and competencies or upskills you're needing to do for the future, this is the chance, because you can leverage that learning as an opportunity as part of a total management or a total rewards program. Doing this too also reduces risks, because you're taking you know, an unknown and making it more known by deploying a whole self model to an equation instead of just show up and do these things. So you're actually helping to identify risk and reduce it at the same time by bringing more knowledge, aspirations, intentions, and skills to the table to solve problems. And it also allows for a culture that fosters innovation. So in many cases, I don't know if those are familiar with lean processing, it's almost like this is a counter to lean processing, where instead of squeezing for efficiency, we're allowing them to blossom for innovation. And the payoffs can be really significant when that happens. Now, the S of easy is to make this sustainable. So is your total rewards plan celebrated and welcomed? Because it has to be well received. And if it's not well received, it's not on the mark. Okay. Is it experienced at all levels within the organization? You can't roll this out and then leave a whole C-suite of people immune to it or saying, we're not doing that. It needs to be across the board, because people need to celebrate this all together, because it does enhance teamwork. It also enables your employees to prepare for the future, so they're not caught off guard when those new obstacles came in. We talked about that with the sustainability effort. And it also, you know, it's going to alleviate a lot of concerns in the organization, because well-being will reduce time off and eliminate or reduce stress leaves. So if you're allowing people's well-being to rise to the surface and be rewarded for it, you'll watch what happens on the other side of the economy. It's no longer a cost. So the last of this is the why. So a little stretch here, we call it your culture. Is your total, oops, sorry, we already did this. It needs to be celebrated, welcome. It needs to be a point of pride for employees. It needs to demonstrate your corporate mission statements, and it needs to be something you can leverage in your recruitment EVP, coming back to where the ripple effect was earlier. So it needs to also show up in your local community. So if your company isn't known in your local community and you undertake a process to modify or change from compensation to total rewards, you will see a noticeable shift in pride at how people approach the workplace and what happens to your workplace as it gets elevated to a place of positive recognition in your community. It needs to be rooted in trust, it needs to be generous, and it needs to be sincere. So it has to be not all of these things, but these are things that you really need to think about as you're setting up your program. Okay. So coming to the end of our time here, next in the employee life cycle, we've really gone through the joining, the growing, the rewarding. We're going to jump inside the circle here for a few weeks, for the next few months. We're going to talk about the empowering side of this. So on the empowering side, the next webcast we're going to talk to is called Leveraging Change Management to Positively Impact Successful Software Adoption. It doesn't even need to be successful software adoption. That's our modus operandi, and that's where we leverage change management the most. But it can be just principles and standards of change management. They're going to help you be more successful in changing the needle on cultural nuances, on total rewards adoption, on any software module that you might purchase and deploy. I mean, these are all great purchases to make, but if you don't leverage some type of change management around them, then typically we're missing the window and we're not getting the most out of that software that we need to do. So that's what's coming next. Follow up to this will be out there. We will share this deck and the recording. We will always invite you to engage with us. D.Whitmarsh at hrstrategiesconsulting.com. You can learn more about HR Strategies Consulting. You might want to contact us and see if, hey, show me more of that compensation management software or payroll control center. We can do that, or on our own website. This is where you will find the links to this event that you can register. It's also embedded in this deck for future reference. And I'm looking at the time. We are pretty close to the end, so I'm going to leave the last few minutes for questions. I did see a question that only adds up to 70%. How about the other 30%? And I think you were referring to the stat on from Aberdeen, if I'm not mistaken. Probably need to go back a little further. But if anybody has any questions or comments that they want to type in or chat with, I'm all ears and can stay, for a little bit to answer those questions. Catherine, I'll have to take that one up and follow up with you. I can't remember quite what it was about. For me, the eye opener in working through this content was really the transition in how it went to being taking work to us and compensating us for effort to rewarding us for well-being. And I can't wrap my head around what that does to set up the whole me at work process and the philosophy, which I'm definitely going to speak more about as we're leveraging this into current projects that we're working on right now. So comments, questions are welcome. If not, in the absence of time, I will, here's another question. Is there an average number of employees for your clients who use the software? The answer is pretty varied. I've put compensation management in front of an organization of under 70 people, all the way up to 10,000 plus. So it really depends, on how often that cycle happens. And certainly, a quick conversation with you and we could understand if it makes sense to leverage technology or just to rely on conventional spreadsheets. It really, the technology helps alleviate errors in inputting, because trust me, if you make one mistake on somebody's total rewards or voluntary comp at one point, you are suspect for life and they'll never trust you. And it's a real deal breaker for a lot of employees. So you want to make sure that there's always checks and balances in your process. And sometimes just putting a spreadsheet up on Google Docs opens up errors all the time when a manager goes in and plays with it, and then HR goes to open it up later, and we miss things in those balance and checks processes. So I hope that helps. With that, again, thank you for your time, attention, questions, and look forward to getting this information in the deck, and we hope to see you in future sessions with us. Cheers, everyone.